Enmei juku kanangyo kanzeon namu butsuyo butsu inyo butsu en bupo so enjo rakugajo chonen kanzeon bonen kanzeon nannen jushinki nannen Furishin kanzeon namu butsuyo butsu inyo butsu en bupo so enjo rakugajo chonen kanzeon bonen kanzeon nannen jushinki nannen furishin kanzeon namu butsuyo butsu enyo butsu in bupo so enjo rakugajo chonen kanzeon bonen kanzeon nannen jushinki nannen furishin absorbing world sounds awakens a Buddha right here this Buddha the source of compassion this Buddha receives only compassion Buddha Dharma Sangha just compassion thus the pure heart always rejoices in the light call this in the dark recall this moment after moment the true heart arises time after time there is nothing but this absorbing world sounds awakens a Buddha right here this Buddha the source of compassion this Buddha receives only compassion Buddha Dharma Sangha just compassion thus the pure heart always rejoices in the light recall this in the dark recall this moment after moment the true heart arises time after time there is nothing but this absorbing world sounds awakens a Buddha right here this Buddha the source of compassion this Buddha receives only compassion Buddha Dharma Sangha just compassion thus the pure heart always rejoices in the light recall this in the dark recall this moment after moment the true heart arises time after time there is nothing but this infinite realms of light and dark convey the Buddha mind all that is and we ourselves come forth in perfect harmony. We offer this sincere and devoted practice for the many beings of the 6 worlds and dedicate it in grateful thanks to the strength and sound practice of the Great Heartland Sangha and its teachers. May our virtuous actions be clear from all interferences, and may our vows be fully realized. We especially dedicate these merits to all those affected by the invasion of Ukraine, Ukrainians, whether leaving their homes or staying to fight, Russians with no say in their country's conflicts, all those protesting around the world for peace, diplomacy, and working for justice. We also dedicate our practice to those whose names we hold in the silence of our hearts, as well as those names we now voice aloud. May we live in perfect peace with Buddha Dharma, and may we realize the Buddha way together. All Buddhas through throughout space and time. All honored ones, Bodhisattva, Mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, Mahaprajna Paramita.
Please prepare for Zazen.
At the sound of the clappers, the first row will turn to the right and the second row will turn to the left. We'll begin walking at a slow pace of 1 step for each breath, and then when the clappers sound again, we'll start walking at a regular pace. The Sangha Covenant. We, the Daishin Kokuji Sangha, with respect for the worth and dignity of each person, with wonder at the wisdom and compassion we seek to cultivate by practice, and with deep gratitude for the teachers of this lineage and our connection to one another, covenant to support each other by upholding the precepts of doing no harm, practicing good, and actualizing good for others. Please have a seat facing the teacher for this evening's talk. Sit comfortably so you can make eye contact. Gata on opening the sutra. The Dharma incomparably profound and infinitely subtle is rarely encountered, even in millions of ages. Now we see it, hear it, receive and maintain it. May we completely realize the Tathagata's true meaning.
So, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for being here and practicing, especially to those who have come here for the first or nearly first time. Thank you. An adventure, yes. How long will we sit here silently? When will the bell ring? When do we stand, sit, whatever? My encouragement is to just enjoy, because before you know it, you will know all the answer to all those things, and the mystery will be gone. And enjoy the mystery. It's fun to discover. So savor it for the moment. It's also occurring to me that as far as we know and can reasonably hope, this would be the last Wednesday service where masks are required. Of course, they'll always stay optional for anyone who wants them, of course, but they will no longer be an expectation or a requirement. And along with that, we'll get to hear our voice again. You know, the Eno has been doing a very intense lift, as they can all tell you. When you're the only one chanting and you are giving voice to the entire Sangha, it's a lot. It's actually a lot harder than when the Sangha is with you, because when the Sangha is with you, you kind of, get them rolling, and then you can breathe a little, So not only can you not breathe, but you have to do it masked. and keep it all going. But then we're going to have to figure out how to get the chanting sheets around to everybody. So that'll be a nice, that'll make some trouble for us. So that'll be good. I have a koan, and I want to look at it, but my heart is really full right now with sadness for the greed and anger and ignorance, which is just at the root of, it seems to be one crazy man's obsession. And how this one crazy man's obsession, or this one malevolent man, or whatever you want to call him, that this one greedy human being seems, by everything I'm seeing, to really have done this entire atrocity, to be singularly responsible for so much suffering. Wow, that's amazing. And I have to say, I was, there's a Ukrainian YouTube channel that I follow, and they had interviews with these Russian kids wearing soldier uniforms that had fallen into Ukrainian custody. And it seems to be, if what I'm seeing is true, that, 19-year-old after 19-year-old after 20-year-old kid had no idea that this was going on. They were simply ordered to go from there to here, and then to go and drive there, and they don't know what's happening. So there's just... And to see tanks rolling across borders in Europe was a thing of the history books. Yet if you look at the history books, it seems to be like a main occupation. The history of Western civilization is just that. But I hope that the result will be positive. In fact, you can say, if you look from the historian's point of view, that for all the tragedy and calamity that war obviously is, it also does, it does bring some goodness. There are some positives to it. For example, our own tradition of Zen came into contact with the West in the wake of World War II. Japan was our sworn enemy at the moment. And the nothing good about World War II, but these cultures came into contact. The Chinese invasion of Tibet caused the Tibetan diaspora. So Gelek Rinpoche, who transmitted us the Lam Rim teachings, would have stayed in Tibet for sure. Nothing good about China taking over Tibet, and yet it does stir the soup in some good ways in some cases. And I don't know any more than anyone else does about what's going to happen, but already I feel some kind of hope that people who were so offended at having to wear a mask or can suddenly see what actual oppression looks like. Like that's actual oppression. And perhaps, vain hope, we might find some more commonhood before we annihilate ourselves. The practice of awakening is evergreen. When the 20s are roaring and all is well and it's time to party, the Dharma is there to help. When it's the Great Depression and breadlines and no work, the Dharma is there. When it's time of war, plague, basically life, the Dharma is always there. Whether we're a young person trying to discern what the hell we're going to do in this crazy world, or we're retired thinking, what was that I just did? We're trying to deal with kids or relationships or any of it, illness, perhaps aging parents. The Dharma is always true. Like gravity is always working, or the sun comes up. It shines equally on the beaches of Hawaii with people frolicking in the waves and into the smoldering embers of the Ukraine. The sun shines. We've been reading The Noble Eightfold Path, Way to the End of Suffering by Bhikkhu Bodhi, and we've been studying in the mornings, we've been talking about right speech. It is said in the course of his long training for enlightenment over many lives, a bodhisattva can break all the moral precepts except the pledge to speak the truth. The reason for this is very profound and reveals that the commitment to the truth has a significance transcending the domain of ethics and even of mental purification, taking us to the domains of knowledge and being. Truthful speech provides, in the sphere of interpersonal communication, a parallel to wisdom in the sphere of private understanding. The two are respectively the outward and inward modalities of the same commitment to what is true. Wisdom consists in the realization of truth, and the truth is not just a verbal proposition, but the nature of things as they truly are. To realize truth, our whole being has to be brought into accord with actuality, with things as they are, which requires that in communication with others, we respect things as they are by speaking the truth. The Venerable here is trying to point to something deeper than right speech being just don't tell a lie because it's a bad thing to do. Basic human ethics will tell you you shouldn't lie about stuff. It should be obvious that societies can't function if no one can trust each other. We've had a dose of that recently. What's true, what's not true? How can we tell? But beyond even just that mundane and yet important reason, awakening has to do with seeing the truth, true nature. And true speech is the outward expression of this. So let's look at an example of right speech. Blue Cliff Record, case 54. Extending both hands. Introduction. Penetrating beyond birth and death, setting devices to work, casually shearing iron and cutting nails, everywhere covering heaven and earth. Whose practice is this? The main case. Master Unman, asked a monk, "Where have you just come from?" The monk said, "Zazen." Unman then said, "What are they saying at Zazen these days?" The monk extended his hands. Unman gave him a slap. The monk said, "Wait, I have something to say." Unman then extended his hands. The monk could say nothing. Unman hit him again. The verse. Taking the tiger's head and the tiger's tail at the same time, that stern majesty extends through all regions. At the final question, he didn't know. How very dangerous. So let's look at this a little bit. For those who may not be acquainted with it, these koan are the stories of exchanges between masters and their disciples, or maybe two realized people playing in the Dharma sometimes. And penetrating beyond birth and death. If you want to talk about what's true, we have to see the true reality of things, beyond yes and no, peace and war, health and ill health, beyond eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. Setting devices to work, this is Unman's business. Casually shearing iron and cutting nails, that's passing through, dealing with barriers that seem impossible. Casually shearing iron, casually cutting nails. Everywhere covering in heaven and earth. There's nothing outside of it. So, whose practice is it? The main case. Unman asked a monk, "Where have you just come from?" As I often say, when you're interacting with the Zen masters, there can be multiple levels of the exchange. Complete mundane, obviously, but also there's always an opportunity for something a little deeper. And in my own experience, in my own training, it's very much the case. So, Unman tries. "Where have you just come from?" The monk said, "Zazen." Zazen is a place. It's a location. Is that right speech? Is it true? Unman said, "What are they saying at Zazen these days? What's the talk there?" The monk extended his hands. Ooh, interesting response. Is that right speech? And what is this extending of the hands? I mean, is it like this? Like, I don't know. Or, is it this? Is it like that? I mean, we don't really know. All we know is the monk extended his hands. Some way or other, right? But it seems to me that the monk has got a little bit of gumption here. There's something inside. And each of those gestures would give, a pretty different reading, right? But what we do know is that Unman gave him a slap. And now we can see a little bit what's going on. I mean, Unman does those things not lightly. And so he gave him a slap, and the monk said, "Hey, I've got something to say." And then Unman extended his hands right away. that is so skillful. That's like, I don't know if you can relate to this, but Sonny Rollins, the tenor saxophone player, he had such a brilliant mind when he was improvising his music that it's like Einstein on the saxophone or something, with a lot of heart, and it's just such a he was so lightning quick to respond and integrate his own musical history and ideas and those of the musicians he was playing with. It was just lightning on the stage, and it was brilliant. In fact, I heard Sonny play. He can no longer, actually, he doesn't have enough lung power to make the horn work anymore. But I heard him in Detroit, I don't know, maybe a decade ago now. And it was the Outside Festival, and he was the headliner, and it was just wonderful back before the pandemic, and all Homo sapiens could gather without fear, more or less. The mundane fears, will I find a corn dog? That was the concern, But he started playing this note. Really low on the tenor. And the tenor is an awesome instrument. If you've never been up close to one, it's the initial heavy metal. It's like, there's a lot of power there. And the way the stage is the sound was ricocheting off all the buildings, because it's an outside stage, and there's all these glass buildings, right? And so Sonny's, and it's, all of a sudden, it seems like it was the frequency of the buildings, because they all started to go with him, and the band just kind of stopped, because he was no longer playing whatever the tune was. He just became, and in an outdoor festival, the kids are running around and people are talking and there's some milling about. That all stopped. The birds stopped. The universe stopped. There was just, and he was an imposing figure, and he was all white-haired, and the elder, it was like Gandalf up there, of African music. And talk about magic. And I don't know, but I think he responded to the fact that the buildings caught that note and sent it back to him, and so he started playing with the buildings. I never got a chance to ask him. But what I do know is I felt like he was saying goodbye. It's just everything came down to this note. And then I don't know how many years we all were there together in this one sound, which we will be hearing again when we can chant together. Maybe that's why it's occurring to me to share this, because I really miss our sound. I love our Eno sound. I really love our Sangha voice. And I so look forward to the right speech of right chanting and disappearing into the sound with you. It's right speech, huh? Is it just not telling a lie? Or is it something much deeper than that? I can still feel Sonny's note. Can you? Anyway, Unman seems like that to me. The monk gave a go and gave some kind of presentation or something. I feel like he flicks a cigarette butt on your forehead. What? I was doing something there. He took it. He took his spear, turned it around, and threw it back at him. The monk had nothing to say, and so Unman flicked another cigarette butt at him. Oh, God. You should know, by the way, there's nothing abusive about this. They're in a working relationship together, and they have a vocabulary together. I'm sure it wasn't a Mike Tyson punch to the jaw. I'm sure of it. Anyway, taking the tiger's head and the tiger's tail at the same time, he surrounded the young guy. He couldn't do anything. Both. The stern majesty extends throughout all regions, covered everything, covered everywhere, like that note from Sonny Rollins. A low B flat, as I recall it. At the final question, the young monk didn't know. How dangerous. There are different kinds of not knowing, by the way. Penetrating beyond birth and death, setting devices to work, casually shearing iron and cutting nails, everywhere covering heaven and earth, nothing outside. Whose practice is this? Well, no one's going to do it for you. Main case. Unman asked a monk, "Where have you just come from? Innocent or not?" The monk said, "Zazen." True, but not yet right speech. Unman said, "What are they saying at Zazen these days?" Again, giving the rookie another shot. The monk extended his hands. He took the shot. Unman gave him a slap. He missed his shot. By the way, you should know that koanic expression in language is not pantomime or gesturing, or there's a mind communication that has to be happening. And it seems it wasn't. The monk said, "Hey, I have something to say." Unman then extended his hands, and the young monk could say nothing. So Unman hit him again. Taking the tiger's head and the tiger's tail at the same time, that stern majesty extends throughout all regions. The final question, the young monk didn't know. How dangerous. Well, so much for the young monk, and so much for Unman, for that matter. Here, today, in our world, where Steve Bannon says, fill the zone with shit. Create a blizzard of lies so no one can tell what's going on. When that's an acceptable political strategy. When we can see the radical disinformation that the Russian people are being told. And don't be fooled, our government's no innocent. How do we function with right speech? Well, at the very least, let's not lie. Let's start with that. Especially, dear one, do not lie to yourself. This is a most important point. Then we can talk about right speech. May it be so.
Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it.
Oh, the suspense. Anyway, Saturday, Shokin workshop from 2 to 5 for Shokin students and Shokin initiates. Regular service on Sunday and Wednesday. Then the following Sunday, March 13th, is Kaishin's ordination. So please RSVP to the invitation if you haven't done so. I believe we can actually have food at this event, so there'll be a little bit of socializing. And then the following Sunday, I believe, is Ango opening. So there's a lot going on. Everything's on the Facebook page and in emails and etc. Anyone else?
That was such a good announcement. Thank you so much. Please restore the Zendo. Good night, everyone.